Wow. So much good stuff about this. Now, there's a new movie coming out, Nick, on Padre Pio. And Sheila LaBeouf is the movie actor who's playing Padre Pio. And he's had a massive conversion to the Catholic faith because of Padre Pio and the beauty of the Mass and the Eucharist. And so I think that's exciting. I saw the trailers. I'm going to tell you, I was disturbed by something in the trailers, but I'm just going to be honest with you. I you know where I stand. I just told you. I want to know, because I've talked to people who knew Padre Pio well. They didn't seem to think that would be something he would do, but I'm open to dialogue. So have you had a chance to see the trailers of the new movie?
I have seen the trailers. I have not seen the movie itself, and I've heard a good portion of the interviews with Shia LaBeouf. In terms of well, first of all, I think that we need to pray for him in a big way, because he's got a big microscope on him. He's obviously had a powerful conversion. He had that really long interview with Bishop Barron.
That's right.
And so many people, I think, are putting a lot of pressure on him. I think the devil's going to have a big bullseye on his back. Unfortunately, I think we need to really, cover him in prayer and pray for that young man. But in terms of the movie, I probably have seen the same trailers that you have seen.
Sure.
And from what I've read of reviews from, critics who were able to get a sneak peek at it, it sounds like it's a lot more about the rise of fascism in Italy than it is about Padre Pio. He almost seems to have a cameo in it.
Yeah.
The other disturbing thing that I've heard is that, someone is in the confessional with him, right, and he uses our worst expletive and tells this person to get out of the confessional.
Yeah.
And first of all, no way.
Okay. That's my
no way would Padre Pio do that.
Nope.
And second, there's no English equivalent for the F word in Italian.
That's correct.
Right. So we know that wouldn't have happened either. But we know from, Padre Pio, it kind of gives, if I may, it gives me an opportunity to clear up a misconception about Padre Pio.
Please do.
I mean, there's really two. One, we see from these pictures of Padre Pio, people would say he seemed to be, very dour, very stern, well, you would too if you were the living crucifix.
You think?
The man was in pain. It wasn't just that he had the appearance of these. He was in pain all the time. So that's one thing. But the people who spent time with him, he was very down to earth. He was humorous. He did tell a lot of jokes, and he was laughing and things like that. When he was stern, he wasn't constantly kicking people out of the confessional. We know that when people would go in who were just curiosity seekers, who were trying to trick him, he would tell them to get out.
Good.
But they said that when the most hardened sinners would come to him, even hardened in the sense of, the greatest sin, but that they were sincerely, had true contrition, he didn't yell at them.
Awesome.
People were afraid that he would, but he didn't. He took them in, and he showed them the mercy of our Lord. He was very gentle with people, no matter how much sin, how grave a sin that they had committed when they were sincere. I also did hear that they took a lot of liberties, artistic liberties with that movie. So I have no reason to believe that person that they said was going into the confessional was based on a true person or true story. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your clarification. That's what some of my other friends said, pretty much what you said. And I just wanted to let people know that because, most of us are going to end up watching that movie. Now you know what to expect. I was mentioning, you talked about how he was hearing so many confessions every day. And can you tell, because I've heard stories where sinners have come out and just have said, wow, Padre Pio was able to read my soul. Is that, that seems very unusual, but I've read in books that he actually did that. We have documentation of that?
Well, we do. We have a couple of stories. One person, you mentioned Gemma DiGiorgio, and I'll talk about she had the healing of her eyes. I want to talk about her grandmother in a minute. Yes. But another person who is well known in San Giovanni Rotondo, his name was Abraham Abehurst. I'm probably botching his name, but he was from out of the area, and family wanted to go see Padre Pio, and he was kind of just along for the ride. Yeah. And he was a fall-away Catholic, and he was convinced to go to confession with Padre Pio, and he did. Yeah. And he went and he said to Padre Pio, I don't know how long it's been since my last confession. I'm not sure I've ever had a good confession. And Padre Pio said, well, just go back 20 years. You had a really good confession right after your wedding.
Oh my gosh.
But but that's about how long it's been. But yeah, start there. So I mean, the fact that he was able, it's not that Abraham was holding anything back. He just couldn't remember. Padre Pio was able to name it for him.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was well known. He became there were really two photographers that were well known associated with Padre Pio. One was Elias Deludo. The other one was Abraham Abehurst. And if a lot of the famous Padre Pios that you see around was probably taken by one of the two. They were both local. Abraham had a little photography tent that he set up outside of the chapel and was given permission to take pictures and everything. So that's a pretty good source. Also, Gemma Di Giorgio, as you were talking about, had a very famous healing. She had no pupils, and after Padre Pio healed her and she could see, she didn't have pupils. I mean, she was studying, but she could still see. We know that she had very good vision and everything. But her grandmother, when they were on their way to visit Padre Pio, Gemma said that she could look out on the steamship and she was starting to have vision. Wow. And so, but her grandmother said, when you go to confession with Padre Pio, you have to tell him that you want a healing. And little Gemma felt so much pressure. She came out, she had forgotten, and her grandmother scolded her. And she went into the confessional and gave her confession and started crying. And Padre Pio said, what's the matter with you? I don't know if he said it that harshly, but he said, that Gemma started to see on the way here already.
Wow.
You don't need to scold her. She's okay. Yeah. So just another example of him, having foresight, knowing things that were going on. Yeah.
Fantastic. Nick, I have to say, I want to give you an opportunity again to tell our listeners how they can contact the center and make a pilgrimage to your center.
Sure. So we call ourselves the home of Padre Pio in the USA because we really are a home here. We're a 106-acre campus. We have a reproduction of Padre Pio's Friary Chapel in Italy.
Wow.
That's connected to a larger spirituality center area where we have where we can have large masses, accommodate thousands of people there. So but then also we have another building that's a world-class museum, and I can brag about it because I didn't build it. I've only been here 4.5 years.
Brag about it. I want to hear about it.
It truly is. It truly is world-class. We have reproductions of where Padre Pio grew up. We have the largest collection of artifacts and relics of Padre Pio in the United States. Wow. We have a reproduction of his cell here. I mean, we have just incredible relics to come and see and venerate and to learn about Padre Pio. So at padrepio.org, you can learn all about how to get here. We're in a little town called Bartow that most people around in Philadelphia haven't heard of, but we're only an hour away from Philadelphia.
Good.
So I just had a priest visitor today that came up from Arkansas, came into town, heard about us, came up to see us, couldn't believe how close we were to the city. So we really do. We get visitors from all over the place. We hope people will come and see us.
Nick, you're a good man. I love your zeal for the faith, and I love that you're promoting the St. Padre Pio. He's such a great saint for our time. And I just want to say thank you for what you guys do out there to promote our love for the Eucharist, Our Lady, and just promoting what St. Padre Pio has saying. He's like another Christ. In other words, he's teaching us, as St. Paul said, to imitate me as I imitate Jesus. So we need to take a look at the life of Padre Pio and see how it can apply to us as followers of Christ. And I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us, my friend.
Terry, it's my pleasure. I'm so glad to be here. Please tell Jesse I said hello.
I most certainly will. And God love you. This has been a great interview. And I hope, folks, you can take this interview, share it with your friends through the podcast, because this is how the word gets out because of you.